Today, we discuss the most important or changing to be most important position in the Dynasty landscape, wide receivers. We're seeing more of them go at the top of the drafts than we have in a while. We're going to tier them, rank them, talk about tiering up, tiering down strategy, as well as startup strategy. Stick around for all that and more. And welcome into the Dyno Construction podcast. Got the gang back together. Happy to have all of us wrap up our tier series between this week and next week. Little bit of housekeeping. Next week in our tight end episode, we'll be announcing our roster repair, so our form of roster review giveaway for hitting 500 subscribers. Hint, hint, if you're not subscribed, hit that button right now, hit that like. That being said, let's start right off with wide receiver theory. So before we talk about tiers, let's talk about just how in general we value and approach this position. There's two ways to look at that. The first one is from the lens of a startup draft. So in a startup draft, how has the wide receiver position and how we're viewing that changed?
I think I'll start at the top. I like that discussion that we had about how it's changed up top more than anything. When I first started playing, I wanted two quarterbacks in the first two rounds. I'm still okay with that, but I am much more comfortable with a one QB, one wide receiver. Not only have we seen an increase in the top end of the value of the wide receiver position, but it seems very stable. It seems like they are, very insulated assets when they get up to that range of value. So I'm very comfortable holding on to them. That was a big reason to hold on to the quarterbacks. And one big thing that I really like Justin kind of brought up off air. If you go quarterback, it's really hard to take a third quarterback high in a draft if the value falls to you. Sure, it's a startup, so you can take them and trade them. And, that's how we do in Dynasty. But if you go quarterback, wide receiver, you're a lot more flexible through the next, 3 to 5 rounds, wherever, these actual good players, you're actually seeing really good value fall to you, and it can really help shape your roster and give you a nice leg up from a startup. So basically, like I said, if I can go QB wide receiver, I'm thrilled. I haven't ever gone wide receiver. I think I'd be okay with it though. I think I don't want a running back in the first 2 rounds, even though some running backs are creeping in there and I might end up with one. It just feels weird. Wide receiver. I guess if you're going Brock Bowers wide receiver, maybe that'd be okay too. But yeah, don't need to go quarterback anymore.
Just to piggyback a little bit off of that before throwing to JP, the value of quarterback in the 5th, 6th round, the 5-6 turn, right? Dak Prescott. We see Trevor Lawrence. I've seen Trevor Lawrence going at the 5-6 turn. Cam Ward available in the 5th, as well as Penix, potentially McCarthy there, right? The value of quarterbacks compared to the wide receivers in the 5-6 turn, where best case scenario, you're getting somebody in the realm of a Ibuka, Worthy, Flowers type. Early 5th, you might wind up getting an Adunze type, but at early 5th, you might be getting Mayfield, honestly, from what I've seen in some drafts. So just later on, I think the value tilts quarterback as well. But somewhere mid 4th to mid 6th, I don't really want to be taking wide receivers at all because it's pretty flat. So that kind of changes my decision a little bit too on that.
Yeah, the trade market's always going to be better for the wide receivers. I mean, if you've got a quarterback that you want to sell, like a Justin Herbert, teams might just be like, I got Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield. I don't need to. But teams are always going to want those hammer wide receivers. I mean, I think the three of us, we've probably had some leagues where we all want to upgrade, and we've all inquired about some hammer wide receivers because you always want them. They're very key to securing the championships. But also, if you've paid attention to Dynasty for a few years, it's those same guys at the top: Jefferson, Chase, CD. These guys, these elite wide receivers are staying up there because targets are earned. It's a skill, and these guys remain at the top because they're just the best in the league. But we see guys like C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. They've got hype as, they're going to their second year as a quarterback, and we've seen their value fall a lot in a year, which it might not seem a lot to go from first round to second round, but that's at least a first round pick in value, if not maybe even more. So C.J. Stroud, he was going as high as 103 last year. He could be at 203 or even much later than that now. So I think that you got a little bit more security with some of the wide receivers, arguably. I mean, if you got a rushing quarterback that's proven to be good and they have that rushing floor, I think they're probably going to stay up there. Those guys are pretty safe. I don't see Jaden Daniels really falling anytime soon.
It would take a Robert Griffin III type of injury for Jaden Daniels to fall off. So hopefully we're not seeing that anytime soon. Of course, I think there's a lot of viability there, right? We've talked about a lot of time the flexibility of a wide receiver. When you look at dynasty-daddy.com's trade database, they give you a visualization of these big circles that are proportionate to the amount of times this player has been traded out of the total trades for the entire position. So we will see a lot of the time that 60, 70% of trades are involving wide receivers, and the numbers are a lot smaller for quarterbacks and running back. So it's a very liquid position. So because we've known that, we talked about that last offseason. How does the wide receiver strategy change for you compared to previous years? Let's start first with on a rebuild. How has your strategy with wide receivers changed, if at all?
That's where I want to have most of my value, because the wide receiver position, it's like the quarterback position where we know that these guys last and stick around. Their careers are longer than running backs. But because we see with rookie wide receivers that if they don't perform right away, their value is plummeting like a rock. Like those guys, you don't want to hold on to them if you see early signals that they're not performing. Even if you're a rebuilder, it's like, oh, I need to hold on to a rookie wide receiver. I don't want to do that if they're really showing bad signals, like low yards per route run to start the year. Sometimes you need to wait for a little bit of a ramp up, but you'll see those signals, especially from like first round receivers.
Jonathan Mingo, Quentin Johnson, Xavier Legette, high draft capital. They don't perform. I hear you, JP.
Because I mean, you see the signals early. It's like, okay, well, maybe they're kind of flashing a little bit. I understand if you're really high on a player, you might like stick to your guns. Like Eli McConkey, he came on stronger later, but I think we saw enough signals that okay, this guy is really good. He's earning targets even though he's not on the field. You'll see some signals like that, but I think I just want to be more proactive with moving wide receivers, when it comes to week 5 or 6 and not holding out hope and capitalizing on training camp stuff. Because I mean, rookie wide receivers, I'm looking right now at Keep Trade Cut top 5 risers. All 5 of them are rookies and 4 out of the 5 are wide receivers. So I think anytime you have a selling window for these guys, if you can get anything more than what you paid, you're probably going to want to move on, especially if they're not a first-round pick wide receiver.
David, any differing opinions on rebuilds? And if not, how has it changed how you approach a wide receiver on contenders?
Yeah, I mean, not really, anything to add to the first part there. I think after draft picks, they're the main currency I want in a rebuild. I mean, quarterback's obviously important, and I can't compete till I have quarterbacks. But, just the flexibility that we're talking about on that rebuild, not only are they great to build around, but they give you good sell windows. So they're not quite draft picks in their fluidity, but they're pretty darn close. As for being a contender, I don't consider myself a contender unless my wide receiver room is there. So, hopefully I've built it where it's full of young studs. But if not, I want at least a couple young studs and then some veterans giving me points. I love to have, Devontae Adams in my flex or Chris Godwin in my flex or something. Mike Evans, these older guys that you can count on for potentially a mid to back end wide receiver 1 season if they're healthy throughout. Terry McLaurin last year was a great example. If you got these guys in your flex and you've got a good core of, 3 or 4 young stud wide receivers, you're going to have a really healthy roster. Even if you have to let the old guy age out, which, we try not to do, but if you've got a good core of young wide receivers already, you can really handle letting one of those guys age out while you compete. So it doesn't change much between rebuild and contender in the sense that I value the position and it's where a lot of my team value is going to be. I'm just a lot more open to the old guys on the contender.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And let's start looking at our tiers. I'm sure we're probably going to start with the old guys in tier 1, right? JP, go ahead and define tier 1 for our listeners and give us a general price point for this tier as well.
Yeah, these are the guys that have finished as a wide receiver 1 or seem highly likely to finish that way in the next few years. These are just the best wide receivers in the league. And the price point for these guys, it's a minimum of 3 firsts and probably 1, maybe 2 of them have to be earlier.
Probably some seconds tacked onto that price point as well. And David, who are those guys?
Yeah, we've got our last 3 wide receiver 1s overall and Malik Neighbors. That'd be Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Malik Neighbors. Yeah, I mean, the 3 firsts is kind of the starting point, right? Like, I'm not even going to respond if it's not on that level. Well, I might respond and just decline it or something, but like, I'm not going to counter. I'm not going to think twice about it. We got to start there. And then I probably need, one of these guys we've got coming up in like tier 7 or 8 or something at the very least, which is when we get there, you'll see they're still kind of like back end first in value in that range that I was just talking about. So man, you'll love to have 1. If you have any teams with 2, you feel great. But most of my teams, my goal is to have one of these guys on a tier 1 quarterback, and then, you just fill in the blanks around it.
Yeah, these are the types of guys you are building around. You feel comfortable building around them. We're not breaking the internet or anything having Chase, Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb over here. So not going to really beat a dead horse too much. They've been a wide receiver 1 in the last 3 years. They're still young enough. We expect, based on their age, 4+ more years of top 10 with potential wide receiver 1 overall production. No brainer whatsoever. 2 questions I want to ask about this tier is the price to go around in this tier. Are you taking are you taking a second to go between any of these guys at this point? Would you take a second to tier down off of Chase to any of these guys?
I think that feels like what the answer should be, but I don't think I'm taking a second to go from Chase to these guys. Also, though, like if I'm rebuilding, am I adding a second to Neighbors to go to Chase? Probably not. So like that's why I think the price is fair. But I don't know. I think to get me to just do it, no questions asked, from Chase down to the other guys, probably need a 1-2 swap, even if they're like a late first or early second kind of situation. But I don't know. I think Jamar Chase has the best chance to repeat that we've seen in a little while. I don't know. That's hard.
Yeah, I definitely understand why it would make you kind of stand on the fence about which way you want to go there. I think I would take it. I mean, just like what we said, CD was the wide receiver 1 last year, Jefferson 2 years ago. So I think that any one of these guys could climb back up to wide receiver 1, honestly. So I think the best practice, just expecting Chase to maybe have a slight decline. Maybe it's not the best to bet on, but we've seen it from the other two. They took a step back after wide receiver 1 finished. I think they can get back. So I think I'd take the second to switch.
Yeah, I also think if somebody approaches you asking to tier up off of these guys to chase, they're chasing, no pun intended, maybe a little pun intended, that wide receiver 1 overall finish, right? So you probably have some leverage if somebody is asking you to get from one of these guys to chase. If you're trying to get from one of these guys to chase, again, they're probably sitting in the same situation as you. I'd probably be happy paying a second to go from Malik Neighbors to Chase if I feel like I am contending and I want wide receiver 1 overall upside and I have the flexibility. But honestly, I could see preferring Neighbors to Chase on like a full-blown nuclear rebuild. I probably would still ask for a little bit of a plus on top of him, but like in my heart of hearts, like if I know like I just took over an orphan or my team just needs to rebuild and it's going to be 2 years before I'm contending, we do have to acknowledge the fact that Chase is going to drop value over the next 2 years. I feel pretty confident in saying that Neighbors will be ranked higher than Jamar Chase in 2 years. I'd put some money on that in Dynasty he'll be ranked higher than Chase. Chase will be 27, approaching 28 at that time, and Neighbors will be 23. We're so ageist that Neighbors will easily be higher ranked in the future. So on certain teams, I could see preferring that. David, I feel like you think I'm crazy based off of your facial expressions.
Those facial expressions were laughing because it was Jamar Chase, who will be 27, just barely turned 27, but he's approaching 28. Yet Malik Neighbors, who's very close to 22, is going to be 23, just 23, no conditions. I just thought that was funny to spin your narrative.
My narrative is flawless.
No, I get what you're saying. I do. And you're probably right. In 2 years, I would also bet on Malik Neighbors if you're giving me even odds there to be higher ranked than Jamar Chase. That's 2 years from now. That's a long time in Dynasty. So I don't know. I don't fault anyone for taking the second to move between these guys. Like I said, I think it's the right price. I feel really it's hard to move off Chase after the season he had. Same situation. Everything seems to be lining up. And I know it's football, anything could happen, but anything could happen to any of the 4 of them. So that's not really a good argument against Chase. It's just acknowledging the fact that anything could happen, and taking the second gives you small insulation in this case. I get it. And, start 11, start 12, maybe I'm thinking about taking that second, but certainly start 9, start 10. I think I'm probably just keeping Chase.
If you look at just Joe Burrow in general, he's almost 5,000 pass yards last year, 43 touchdowns. So a little regression from him is probably in store, which would probably pass on to Chase. But I don't know. He's just so darn elite. He could do it again.
And the last question was just who is our wide receiver 1 overall for the audience? And in a vacuum, it seems that no questions asked. It's Chase for all of us. So going to go ahead and not ask that second question now that we've established that. And we're going to move on to our tier 2 guys. Our tier 2 wide receivers are going to be guys that we expect could potentially be tier 1 guys. It's potentially, or I think there's one guy we'd argue probably can't be tier 1 at this point in his career, even though it's a little disrespectful to his production. We expect him to be a top 5 producer, and he is still young. So all these guys, I think, top 10-ish wide receivers. All of these guys probably in the neighborhood of 3 late firsts of value, mid to late firsts. But if there's an early first in there, might be a early first, a mid first, and a second, something like that. Slightly less valuable than the tier 1 guys, but studs nonetheless. And who are those studs, JP?
Yeah, we have Puka Nacua, hot nude stud coming to the league, Brian Thomas Jr., and the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Did you say nude stud or new stud, JP? Just to be clear.
We'll have to play back the footage. I thought I said new, but you heard something else.
Just reminded me of that Zoolander clip. That Hansel, he's so hot right now.
Yeah, this is a great tier. this is a tier of guys you're happy to have as your wide receiver one. No doubt, no question. These are all guys that we feel very secure about based off of their production so far. Interesting players to talk about here, and I want to dive into a couple things. The first one is Brian Thomas Jr. With Travis Hunter coming in, the fact that we have seen, like on a collegiate level, we've seen BTJ outshadowed by a extreme talent in Malik Neighbors. Do we have any long-term concerns about him being overshadowed by somebody who we also view to be an extreme talent in Travis Hunter? I'll start with David first, then JP.
I mean, you have to acknowledge the reality of that possibility, but also BTJ is really good, and he was new to football. I don't remember exactly how many years he had played before he declared for the NFL draft, but it wasn't many. He's learning behind, at that point, Neighbors was so much more experienced. He's also better, but that it looked like a clear difference. Now we see after a year in the NFL from each, okay, maybe they're just both really good, and it could be the same case with Hunter. And if Lawrence is good enough in that offense, I could see him supporting two high-end wide receivers. I mean, am I worried yet to some degree? Yes, but I'm still paying this price for BTJ and happy to do it.
And to answer that question, 2018, since his sophomore year of high school, so hasn't been playing since he was, in his backyard with his neighbors, etc., like some kids, but still for a while. At least that is what Google AI has told me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take it into consideration a little bit. I think I probably would have had him as a wide receiver 5 without Travis Hunter for sure. He might be a wide receiver 7 for me now, but it doesn't bump down a tier for me. I mean, we've seen seasons where 2 wide receivers finish in the top 15 together. You've seen Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, even back to Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. It happens. I think it more so hurts the other tertiary options when you have a really, really good wide receiver 2. The alphas are still going to get their targets. And he is a guy, even if he does see a small decrease in what he could have had target-wise, he doesn't need 160 targets to be someone that's a top 5 wide receiver, because not only is he one of the most scary wide receivers down the field because of his freakish size and speed combination, but also after the catch, he's just so explosive as well, with also just a huge frame. So bumps him down a little bit for me, like I said, but not too much of a worry.
And next question, Puka Nacua. He is a guy that Matt Harmon has recently said for NFL purposes is a tier 1 wide receiver for him. Fantastic player.
Tier 1 for Dynasty as well.
I thought he did too, but I didn't want to misquote it. He is very high on him. The guru of route running says this is a guy that gets open on most of his routes with incredible efficiency. Yards per route run, he led the NFL last year, I believe, in yards per route run. This is a guy who has just been a stud since he has come into the league. What does he need to do to get to tier 1 in your guys' eye?
I think, we have the one joke that he has to come back into the NFL with better draft capital. Otherwise, that's not going to happen, clearly. So I think the way that he gets into tier 1 is he has to finish with one of those monster seasons close to what we've seen from Jamar Chase lately. He has to be wide receiver 1, maybe wide receiver 2 puts him there. But also, there's also that question of who's going to be the quarterback of the future. I kind of think it's going to be Stafford's last year. So that kind of makes the long-term projection muddier, makes people not feel quite as safe with it. But if he's wide receiver 1 or 2, I think that probably gets him there. But he has to do it this season, because he's getting older, obviously, like everybody. So it's got to be now.
Yeah, I think keep producing as he has and play at least 14 games, hopefully 16-ish. If they happen to be in a position where they rest him a game, which I don't expect that to be the case for that team, but you never know in the NFL. For me, that's it. He's a stud. He's one of my biggest regrets in fantasy. I really liked him as a prospect, and then I let some bad thoughts get in my head and talked myself out of him and ended up not even taking any flyers on him because I'm an idiot. We all have our processes. We all grow our processes, right? That's how we get better, is making mistakes. So I have since bought a couple shares because I enjoy having Puka. And I know you tried at a nickname there for a second, Justin, but I feel like he needs a good nickname. He's got a really fun name and all, don't get me wrong. It could just be Puka, Prince is Prince, whatever. But I don't know. I feel like he deserves a nickname.
I'm a fan of Puka Nuclear. I have a couple teams that I've named that throughout the years. But if I had to vote, that'd be the one I'd vote for personally. But yeah, I love Puka. Have loved him for a while. Another guy we also love as a podcast, and I think every fantasy player loves, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Only real question is, do we have any major concerns about the regime change or not, since it's same QB throwing to him and they kept it in-house from a play calling standpoint, somebody who's already been part of the system?
Yeah, I'm not concerned. I mean, same quarterback. Dan Campbell's still there. I hear the goal is to keep the offense very similar in, their concepts at least. They might change how often they run like trick plays and stuff, I have a feeling, but that didn't really impact how they use Amon-Ra. I think the concepts will stay the same. I think his usage will stay the same, and they'd be absolutely insane to try to deviate from that.
Yeah, he's been rock solid. I think what worries me more is just that we've seen Jameson Williams emerge more and the ground game really be so dominant. Is 2023, he had 94.7 receiving yards per game, and last year that dropped down to 74. So he dropped 20 receiving yards a game, but his touchdown rate went up. So that'd be the one concern, is if we see that the yards don't climb back up and that the touchdown rate does see some regression, then maybe we'll be disappointed, and he could fall a little bit, but the offense runs through him, and they were just so good last year dominating teams that they probably will have to pass more than last year, so that should help too.
I agree with that analysis. Will be a stud going forward is my prognosis for him. Moving on to tier 3. David, can you briefly define this small tier as well as give us a rough price point?
Yeah, for me, this tier should be split up, and one of the players in it should go up to tier 2 and one should go down to tier 3. But I get why we have it this way. They're both studs. One is probably a little too old to be climbing much more, and the other one, he has an outside shot at wide receiver overall number 1, I think, this year, which would probably vault him to tier 1.
And JP, who are those studs, younger and middle-aged?
Middle-aged is currently 26.3 years old, Nico Collins and Drake London. So, yeah, David, he was the one between the three of us who was saying to split the tier up. I was pushing for Drake London to be the same value tier. I mean, actually right now, shockingly, Drake London is slightly above Nico Collins just on keep trade cut. That's not the end all be all, but I think that's an interesting little note. And if you also are in the redraft streets, the best ball streets, you'll see that Drake London's pretty much the locked in wide receiver 9 after the top 8 guys that we just looked at here with Nico Collins included. So I think with him being younger than Nico, and then he's got the draft capital long term and just kind of expect to be a top 10 wide receiver. Combined also with, I think Penix tended to target him a little bit more than Cousins. Cousins was really liking Mooney. So we'll see. It was a small sample size, but I just think based on that age and expectation this year that he deserved to be in the same value of tier.
It's a little crazy to me just looking at the top 9 guys so far, all being, pretty much consensus top 10 redraft type of prospects and players, like with the age that they also have. Obviously, these are not the youngest wide receivers in the game, of course, but the fact is that they are still all young and are all still so productive is just kind of a testament to what we were talking about earlier about they're great. They're expected to continue to be great. Their age is good. Some of their ages are great. Like, these are very solid assets. So looking at these 2 guys here, both of them, I think we all would agree, have a outside chance at wide receiver 1 overall. They have the skill to potentially do it. Penix is a question mark. Penix? How do I say it?
I thought it was Penix.
JP's an Atlanta guy.
He is.
Are we wrong, JP? Tell us.
I've been hearing Penix more lately, but I've heard it all.
The Penix debate will continue at a later date.
That's a big Penix debate.
These 2 guys, I think, are very interesting players. Nico Collins, I'm definitely personally looking to tier down off of if I don't feel like I'm in a contending window. David, since you're a little bit higher on him, you kind of almost felt like he might belong still in the tier 2, which I can kind of see that case. His age isn't really that crazy compared to Lamb, JJ, Chase, and Amon-Ra, right? He's within 8-9 months of those guys, more or less. Do you think that, how are you approaching that?
I mean, for me, it was really hard to separate Amon-Ra and Nico by a tier, given their production, their situation, their ages. I know Amon-Ra's done it a little more, but when Nico's on the field, he shows that he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's got a good young quarterback. They filled out the wide receiver room around him, which I think will only enhance Nico Collins' efficiency, because like last year it was basically Nico when he was healthy and that was it. So it was really easy for the defense. It was hard for them to move the chains if they weren't able to get Nico involved. So hopefully these young rookies they added and Christian Kirk can really help the offense as a whole. I think I give Nico Collins, I'd probably put him as the 4th most likely wide receiver 1 overall right now. I don't know if that's bold, but I think that's where I have it. It's really tight, but I think all 7 of these or 9 of these guys that we've shown so far have a chance. But I think after the top 3, I'd probably put Nico at 4 if I'm just doing redraft rankings right now. So I think that's the big reason for me. And then with London, I don't know. I feel like we're all acting like Penix is hit already. And I know I've been saying this all year, and so he's probably going to be good, and I'm probably going to eat my suspicions, but like I just think it's smart to be a little weary of how good he's going to be. We thought he was overdrafted. He played 3 games, 2 of them were okay, 1 was pretty darn good, but it was against a terrible defense. Like, I'm rooting for him. I hope it's good. There's a lot of fun players on that team. I hope they're all good. I hope it's a good offense, but I felt like London belonged with this next group of receivers. It just feels like they're all very similar to me, and like I said, I felt it was difficult to separate Nico and Amon-Ra by a tier.
I'm going to call him Penix because I think it's more fun, but I think you're right. Penix could be not good for the NFL, but based on the fact that he doesn't run, he is an aggressive, like, downfield passer, and kind of reminds me a little bit of how Jameis Winston plays, that even if he's not good, I think there's a chance just because he is aggressive, he's willing to throw to the X receiver to the sideline down the field and everything, even force it in tight windows. I think that even if he's not ever a top 15, 20 quarterback ever, I still think he could be enough for Drake London to be a good fantasy producer, but it's still a good point because that's could create long-term question marks for the fantasy community.
Yeah, I was gonna say something along those lines of he doesn't need to be elite, doesn't need to be a difference maker. And in fact, a guy who has kind of some capped ceiling but goes to his first read way too much, which we saw in that, was it a 21 target game? It was something like that last year. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world for the first read, which is very clearly Drake London. So small tier, small amount of time hopefully spent on that tier. Moving on to tier 4, an interesting tier, some very young studs in this tier. These guys are easily worth 2 firsts. To me, one of them has to be an early first. All these guys are worth more than, well, most of these guys are worth more than the 102 to me. One of them is, it's tough. It's kind of on that line. Probably could see a situation where I might go the 102 depending on it, but worth more than the 102 in general on this tier. And I'm going to let David name these young studs because he's got a couple of Buckeyes in there.
Yeah, I kind of want to expand on that 102 price point because I was thinking about sending a 102 that I have in a draft that still hasn't started, but it's coming up. Just thinking about sending it for a few of these guys, and I was going to bring that up. So funny you should mention that. But the players. First up, we've got Ladidi Makonke, JSN, Marv, and Garrett Wilson, the 3 Buckeyes. I imagine Garrett Wilson is the one you're unsure on spending the 102 on, but the other 3 you do it easily.
No comment. But yes.
And that makes sense. That's kind of like I feel that too in my head. I have Marv on the team. I'm looking to send this 102, so I was going to send it for Ladd and JSN. I also am kind of overexposed to Garrett Wilson as is. But I still believe in him. He's still very young. Well, very young. He's about to turn 25. He's still young enough. And I think the chemistry that Fields has with Garrett Wilson from college, plus we've seen Fields support DJ Moore's best career year as a fantasy wide receiver. I do think Garrett Wilson belongs in this tier, but I do think he's the most shaky part of this tier, and I think that's fair.
That's like what Derek Carr with the Devontae Adams, the college connection. Maybe there's something to it, but I don't know.
I mean, Devontae Adams was still good. Always is. Probably will still be this year as well. So price to move within this tier. Are we taking any second to go between these 2 guys? Is there anybody, let's say Ladd, who might be at the top of the tier more or less, or Marv might be at the top of the tier, going down to that shakier part of Wilson? Is a second getting it done? JP first, then David?
I was a big advocate for Garrett Wilson last year. I still think he's super talented. You just look at the amount of targets he draws every year. So I still really like him a lot. So I'll go with yes. I'll take a second to go between any of them. Unless it's Marv on a contender, then I don't know. He's at the bottom of my list personally.
You're going to eat those words. Marv's coming for you this season, man. It's going to happen, baby. I believe. If not for the fact that I have a lot of exposure to some of these people, so it depends on my portfolio personally, but in a vacuum, yeah, I'll take a second to go between any of these.
And just a little player talk on them. JSN, fantastic season last year, breakout year. Just curious if for you guys, there is a net negative, positive, or kind of neutral with the situation change. Obviously, we have a new quarterback in Darnold, but we've also removed pretty much all of the target competition there, right? Obviously, Cooper Kupp came in from reception perception. Shout out to Matt Harmon. He said he's pretty much a slot only guy who is relatively washed on his win rates compared to in his peak. So not much target competition, but a new quarterback situation. Do we still expect him to be contending for top 15 wide receiver production with wide receiver one upside?
I think you might have missed the most important change there. That was bringing in Clint Kubiak, Gary Kubiak's kid, the new OC. He comes from the Shanahan tree. He likes to put guys in motion. I think that'll really help JSN. I like some of the things we saw from the Saints offense last year where he was the offensive coordinator before they started to deal with all their injuries. I think gives me a lot of hope for him. I've been a huge believer in JSN through his time at Ohio State. Not just a homer pick, but, I always say when I don't think they're going to be good, I'll say it too. But I watch all their plays. I pay attention to them through practice. So I just feel a lot more confident in my evaluation of Ohio State receivers. And I felt like he's going to be a superstar. I still think he's ascending. I am excited to see his season this year. I'm excited because they kind of have to use him in 2 wide receiver sets. It'd be absolutely insane not to. So I'm excited to see what he can do outside. It is obviously some projection, but if he can establish himself as a good outside receiver as well as what he's done in the slot last year, I don't know if he can be receiver 1 overall. I don't know if that offense has that in it, but I think he could definitely continue to rise for sure.
Yeah, I didn't mean wide receiver 1 overall, but definitely that he can push for a wide receiver 1 finish.
Yeah, I tend to think that Cooper Kupp is pretty washed too. If you just look at his advanced stats, his open scores, reception, whatever it is, he seems to be on the way out of the league. And I don't know why they gave him the contract that he did. I mean, Sean McVay was happy to move on, and he ran the offense through Cooper Kupp for so long, and he was happy to cut bait because I think he could see the writing was on the wall. So it doesn't bother me that much. I think JSN, he is good on the outside too. He's not an X wide receiver, but if you look at it's either the yards per route run or success rate versus man. I can't remember what it was. Matt Harmer referenced it, that just versus man, he was one of the most efficient wide receivers in the league last year. Smaller sample because he played against more zone than other guys, but I think he can win as a man guy, and he could be top 3 to 5 in targets just this year.
Yeah, definitely a guy we are all high on. I certainly prefer him over everyone in this tier with one exception, and that would be Ladd McConkey. So I want to briefly talk about Ladd McConkey here as well. JP, you kind of were pushing for him to be in tier 3 with those 2 guys. So go ahead and share with us why you had that.
Yeah, from week 8 on last year, he was a top 10 wide receiver, and that was even when the allotment of his snaps were still creeping up. And this year, they add Trey Harris. I don't think he's going to be a guy taking targets away from Ladd. Might even help a little bit to have that outside presence. And the offense ran through him. So, I mean, if you're producing top 10 fantasy numbers as a rookie, if you take any step forward in your second year, I mean, this guy realistically could be top 7, top 8. I mean, he really could be top 5 because not only is he just really explosive. I mean, he tested with 4.39. He's a tackle breaker. He's so reliable. Justin Herbert's a great quarterback too. So honestly, I know that these smaller wide receivers are like, people are like, these ceilings capped. But no, we've seen tons of slot receivers finish top 5 in fantasy. So, and he's an explosive guy. So I think that even with the redraft, he's right there around like wide receiver 11, 12, right behind AJ Brown. So for a rookie wide receiver, he's just so dang impressive. It might have been the most impressive outside of Brian Thomas Jr. I get even the league neighbors too. The class was just so good.
Definitely a good class. One last thing I want to touch on in this tier. To me, this is kind of the tier down destination tier. If I'm tiering down off of tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, I want one of these guys and a first and maybe more. If I'm tearing down off of tier 1, I might want 2 firsts, one of them being a 1-2 swap potentially, maybe 2 firsts straight up if I can get it, So this is the tier down destination tier to me from tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So I've kind of outlined a rough price point for tier 1 as 2 firsts-ish, a first in a couple seconds if we really like the first, and a 1-2 swap, something in that neighborhood. David, can you give me a tier 2, tier down, tier 2 to tier 4, tier down kind of like blueprint?
Yeah, just real quick, Ladd, I was looking up his reception perception profile since we were talking about it. Only 14% of routes, so small sample size, 98th percentile against press. I did not see that coming. 6th best mark ever in that he's graded. Again, small sample size, but that's the thing everyone seems to knock him on. Oh, he can't line up on the line of scrimmage. Well, apparently he can. So yeah, a great player, and this whole area is really hard to rank, which I think is why you're calling this a great destination to tier down to, because if you can get a reasonable amount of value to move to one of these guys that could be tier 1 next year, I think all 4 have that chance. Garrett Wilson might need to be wide receiver 1 overall to actually have a chance at that. Probably does. I'll be fair. But I think the 3 young guys there put together a really good top 5, maybe top 3 kind of season, and they're probably tier 1 or at least pushing it. So yeah, like you said, I love to tier down here. To get from tier 2, I don't know if you can get to first. I think if it's a good first, that might be all that you can get. And I think, I mean, I'm not happy to trade Puka or BTJ ever, but if I'm getting a good first in JSN or a good first in Lad, like, I think I might do it, especially, if it's a random first, I might need like a second or, something else. If I can do a 1-2 swap, awesome. But I don't see a world where you're getting more than a good first to make that move.
And JP, kind of give us the roadmap to tier down from tier 3. Not a long way to go to these guys. What would it take, or what would you be looking to acquire if you're tiering down to one of these guys?
I think that if I'm getting a first, I'll do it every time. I don't know if you're gonna be able to get a first. I personally advocated for Lad to be in the tier, so it's not a huge gap. But if I'm taking the tier as a whole, I think I would consider 2 seconds, honestly, because I really do like this tier. Like you said, it's a really, really strong tier down tier. So I think 2 seconds is, I think I'd probably take it if I was looking to tier down.
Yeah, it just depends on your roster construction for sure. Sometimes you might prefer more of the hammer and Nico to these unknown guys, but who knows? These guys could be just as much of a hammer. So that's why we love this tier. All right, so we've talked a lot about this tier, how it relates to other tiers. Let's go on to a small tier 5. JP, how would you define this tier? And give me a price point briefly.
This tier, I would just define it as upside. There's a guy who's a little older, but we got young upside and we've got short-term upside as well, is how I would describe it. And I think the price point for this is about 2 firsts plus maybe a little bit on top. That's where I'm at right now. And David, who we have in the tier?
Yeah, the older guys, AJ Brown, slightly younger Rashee Rice, and then the 2 rookie receivers we like, Tet McMillan and Travis Hunter. I think this is a nice consolation prize if you can't tier down to tier 4. Obviously, the price changes a little bit, but like if you're competing and you can get something on top of one of the guys up there to go down to AJ Brown, like, let's do it. I know he's 28, but he's probably going to outscore the guys in this tier. I know Rashee Rice might have something to say about that. The rookies might even have something to say about that, but I would bet on him having the highest points in this tier for sure. And then the other 3, like Rashee Rice, I know he's 25 already, but his position, his age, like if he's healthy and he comes back to his role, he definitely has some room to grow in value. And the 2 rookies, obviously, if they start to show that they are what we think they can be, they can obviously jump up this list too.
Have you guys seen how much Rashee Rice has risen in the redraft? So on Underdog, he was around pick 48 and ADP wise, like wide receiver 20. He's risen to wide receiver 12, pick 21.9. Now this is Underdog. Wide receivers a little bit different. Yeah, his expectation is wide receiver 12 right now in Underdog. He's climbed T. Higgins, Marvin Harrison, Tyreek, Garrett Wilson.
I have him above in redraft rankings, all those guys in a vacuum, so I don't disagree with that at all. I think the big question for Rice, right, is 2-part. One of them is just he has 2 years left on his rookie deal. Kansas City doesn't pay people. And I don't think anybody here really thinks he's incredible. Like, nobody thinks he's a top 12 at overall wide receiver in the NFL that I've really heard talking about, like the top 12 tacticians, the best of the best, right? So getting paid big versus going somewhere else, like there's that question. And there's the injury question. There's the knucklehead question. And then, of course, there's also the did Worthy supplant him kind of in some of that gadget intermediate role question. So a lot to worry about, but a lot of upside. And I think for this season, I expect him to be a top 15 wide receiver with top 5-ish, top 3 maybe ceiling. Could he be the wide receiver 1 overall? Crazier things have happened. I would not bet on it. Yeah. AJ Brown could be the wide receiver 1 overall. I think that's more likely than Rashee Rice being the wide receiver 1 overall. So those are 2 guys that, as a buy at this price range, mid 4th-ish startup pick, these are guys you can probably get for a mid 1st and a mid 2nd type of price point. Not in every league, but you could throw it out there for them, right? You probably don't need 2 firsts to get a potential wide receiver 1 that still is more or less in the prime of their career, right? Kind of a crazy price point. So obviously we prefer those 2 guys on contenders. These rookies, talk to me a little bit about how you're approaching them.
For me, I'm adding them where I can. I found when my finger actually had to click the button, I was drafting Hunter above Tet, but I view them pretty much the same. I think I have maybe 1 or 2 more shares of Hunter than I do Tet, so I'd like to keep it close to even, but I think the upside of Hunter, if he does hit what we think he can, if he does play enough offensive snaps, there's definitely some ifs there, but he could be Dynasty wide receiver overall number 1. I don't know if Tet has that in him, like maybe very, very, very top end, high end outcome of Tet, maybe, but I just don't really see that. I think Hunter has a legitimate chance at it. So that's why I kind of favor him, but I love having both these guys where I can get them.
I'm sitting at 3 Travis Hunter, 0 Tet. I would love some exposure to Tet, David, if you want to sell him to me anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for. I probably want to spread that a little bit too, because we know Tet is going to be playing a ton of wide receiver snaps, and obviously that's the question with Travis Hunter. But the upside, like David said, is just so real there. I mean, I'm looking at reception perceptions stacked rankings. It's from 2021 class to up till now. He's got Travis Hunter right behind Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jamar Chase, above guys like Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, Rome Odunze, Olave. So I mean, yeah, this guy, he's freaky. He does everything that you want out of a wide receiver, and it's insane that he's able to play both sides of the ball. So we'll see what the snap share does look like. I think if he plays more wide receiver snaps than expected, he probably raises up to tier 4 in short order, but that's still a question mark, and that's still a risk.
And I think it's an interesting, because there's too much of a caveat. You need to say contender versus non-contender. So I'm not going to really ask tiering between this whole tier as a whole, but are you taking a third to go between the rookies and a third to go between the veterans, I think is the way I would phrase the price within the tier question. David first, then JP.
Yes, between the rookies, I think. I don't know. It's situational for the two contenders, but I think that's a fair price. I think there's a little more upside to Rice overall that, I don't know, it's kind of hard to move off of him for a third day. I don't know. I think that's a fair price. I'm just not sure I'd do it.
I think I probably would. If you look at the market, they're all pretty close right now. Literally, they're 4 in a row on Keep Trade Cut at least. And Rashee Rice, he's just been, I just don't, like you said, David, he probably has the most upside. I don't know why he's so disrespected. He's being drafted above JSN and Garrett Wilson in redraft. I guess it's just a question marks, but yeah, I really like to have Rashee Rice, and I think the third's just good process to do right now. I'll take it.
Yeah, we hit on all those question marks. Just right about 3 minutes, and I answered that question about why, but I think we love him at the price by that doubt discount for sure. And tier 6, really short. 2-man tier. Pretty much the last 2 guys that I think we kind of view as approximately cornerstone level asset. Obviously, they're not like cornerstone blow you away assets at this point, right? These are probably round 5-ish, late round 4 startup pick. These are also probably some of the last guys that we feel with absolute certainty we prefer over a random future first as well. And who are those guys, JP?
My guy, Rome Odunze, and T. Higgins, who's coming off one of his best years. Points per game, he was top 8 last year, but obviously he's playing beside Chase, and that was a little bit of an outlier year, but still, it was remarkable to see.
And Odunze, I was just watching I believe it was Matt Harmon and Ray JQ on Yahoo Sport talking about next year's JSN, and Odunze was their pick. Kind of funny, David. I'm sure, although I didn't ask you to prepare for this, that you could kind of walk us through why that parallel is entertaining.
Well, mostly because I remember talking about this draft day last year, and everyone was talking shit on the take, even though it was so obvious that like everyone came around on it eventually. But yeah, I mean, it was very clear. He was in a crowded room. He was, rookie, obviously going to have tough target competition. Takes a minute to learn the offense when you already have tough target competition, and you're learning the offense. You're going to get off to a slow start, and for a rookie, that might be the whole season. And then we knew that room was going to clear up a little bit going into the following year. Well, we expected it to, at least. We also expect these young players to get better. Like Lockett didn't leave, but JSN didn't. That didn't matter to JSN because he was better. Rome Odunze, I'm not sure how much it matters that DJ Moore didn't leave, but Keenan Allen did leave. So things are clearing up a little bit for him. Got new offensive coordinator in there. I've bought a couple shares. I have a lot of Rome Odunze at this point, and I'm a Packers fan, and I don't want him to succeed, but I have a pretty strong feeling that he is going to succeed. I think he's going to be a very good buy at this price. And then going into next season, 2026 season, we're going to see him probably top 3 or at least top 4 tiers personally.
Yeah, I mean, he was somebody I was a huge advocate for last offseason. I mean, I referenced Matt Harmon's stacked rankings. He's 4th on that, right behind Travis Hunter. So in a vacuum, he's a good route runner. For his size, he's a really good route runner, and he's a guy that can win the ball in the air in contested situations. He was drafted with top 10 draft capital in the NFL, in that stacked class. Man, I really like him a lot. I think he could emerge. I mean, we didn't know for sure if JSN was going to emerge last year. I don't know if we remember, but he was drafted outside of, he was like wide receiver 30 to 40 range. I know J.J. Zachariason, he referenced it recently in an episode I listened to, and I was like, wow, I forgot that's where his expectations were. But Dunze's expectations are a little higher than what we had for JSN. But yeah, I just think when you look at the X wide receivers around the league, the ones that are really, really big fantasy producers, they're usually explosive. So he's not the most explosive guy. He's a good athlete, but he's not Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins, in my opinion. So with it being crowded, he really has to merge as the top alpha target, in my opinion, to be like a big producer this year. But I still think there's value insulation there, especially because a lot of people are expecting DJ Moore to potentially be out the door. We don't know about Luther Burden, if he's going to be a great NFL player yet or not. So I think there's a lot that points in him being a good producer this year, but you just can't bank on it yet.
And Higgins, obviously, we just saw amazing touchdown production. And I mean, if JP talked about potential Burrow regression impacting Chase, who is probably the best wide receiver in the NFL, definitely top 3 from an NFL standpoint, I think we'd agree on. It's going to affect a guy who, while still a very good wide receiver, certainly is not that level of a player. So how are we dealing with him? I think we're very happy to add him to probably any team, honestly, because he's still young enough, just got a contract extension. But do we kind of view him as a sell if you can get fair value on a rebuild with his age at this point, or is he someone we're still viewing as a core piece we'd hold through a rebuild?
I think you kind of hit the nail there. Like, you're happy to add him on any team, so you're happy to hold him on any team. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this might be the peak of his dynasty value, right? He might not ever have a better season. He's getting a little bit older. What is he? 26 and a half right now. So
Practically dead.
he's getting close there. So yeah, actually, I'm going to change my mind. I thought he was a year younger than that. At 26 and a half, I'm trying to sell him on a rebuild because I don't think his dynasty value will ever be higher. But if I can't get fair value, I'm not just looking to get him off my roster. I do want fair value. I think he's still got a couple more good years in him. 18.5 points per game last year in PPR scoring. That's pretty darn good. He had 3 games over 29 points. Those are 3-week winners right there. Like, I'm happy to have him. I think, kind of piggybacking on how you defined this tier, this group from Higgins up, I'm happy if I trade for these guys when I see that trade go through. You know, there's a cost to it and all, but I'm happy to add these guys. The rest of the guys, like, coming below, yeah, I love wide receivers, so like, cool, I'm happy to add these guys too. But like, these guys are core players. They're players I want to build around. They're players I'm excited to add to my roster, and I do think T. Higgins still fits that bill. I'd be interested to see what happens over the next few years. His contract's kind of weird. They can get out of it, I think, any year they want after this year. So we kind of have that uncertainty with where he'll be playing in his future still, but it's hard to ignore 18.5 points per game.
Yeah, he's definitely a wide receiver excited to have. The rest of the field beyond him is not all that exciting. It's just right now, you look at Keep Trade Cut, there's no wide receivers inside the top 25 that are 27 years of age or older, except for A.J. Brown. So that'll be T. Higgins next year. And also, not only is there the age thing, but the injuries. I think that can shorten the length of your career as well, which we've seen him have a tough time with injuries. But still a very good wide receiver to have right now.
And just kind of on that argument you just made about A.J. Brown, T. Higgins has never done A.J. Brown things, right? His best season last year was not A.J. Brown things, even like what we've seen. Like, you know, it wasn't like the ceiling of what A.J. Brown can provide, you know, a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. I believe he was a wide receiver 1, but he was not pushing for a top 3, 4 like we've seen A.J. Brown do. So while I think A.J. Brown is holding this value because of production, I think I would certainly bet against T. Higgins holding this value off of production. So I think he will drop down as he hits that dreaded age value cliff, even if he's still able to produce. Moving on to tier 7. It's an interesting tier. Guys that are probably all worth a late first, more or less. I kind of view this as a better in best ball or start 11 type of wide receivers. I don't necessarily view these as necessarily hammers, but definitely guys I'm happy to roster, happy to have, but probably not kind of difference makers. And David, who are those guys? And tell me if you disagree with that.
Yeah, this is our first of the big tiers. There are more players in these next 3 tiers than we had in our first 6, but it's just kind of how the group breaks up. Here we have Olave, Devonta Smith, Xavier Worthy, Emeka Egbuka, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. I don't think any of them are really difference makers at this point. I think a few of them still have a chance to show they can do that. If Olave can stay healthy and that offense shows that they have a competent quarterback. I don't know if they will. Xavier Worthy versus Rashee Rice, if we're wrong about Rice being the guy there and it's Worthy, obviously he could climb up, and Emeka Egbuka, the rookie, hasn't shown us what he is in the NFL yet. I think people might argue to have Devonta Smith a little higher, and I guess I understand that, but I think he's Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. They're all just who they are at this point. And yeah, I'm happy to have them on my team, and maybe on some teams I would buy those guys, but they're not players I'm actively buying on all my rosters. You know, they're situational buys.
Yeah, and I think since these tiers are bigger, it's not worth talking about every single player, but obviously shout out whoever you want to, Justin. But the two guys that do stick out is Devontae Smith, who you initially said, and Egbuka. Egbuka's probably the one I'm probably most comfortable to send a random first for. And then Devonta Smith, I did advocate a little bit to maybe consider him in tier 6 just because he's been a rock-solid producer for just a very long time. His production was within a point per game of A.J. Brown last year, but I think A.J. Brown's probably I think that was a little bit of a down year for him, but I just really like the steady production from Devonta Smith.
Yeah, and this tier, like I mentioned, it's a start 11 tier for me. Obviously, Ibuka, I think it's kind of funny because piggybacking off the last tier conversation, he is next year's 2 years ago's JSN and last year's Roma Dunze, perhaps, right? Like, he's a guy that I think we expect. Crowded wide receiver room, really talented guy, NFL ready guy, good route runner, separator, etc. So definitely interesting player. I think these are guys that have some boom game potential, probably don't have the floor a lot of the time, right? Olave, Smith, Worthy, Flowers, and Addison. I think we all would be surprised if none of them, if they don't end up disappointing us several weeks next year, right? From they're in our starting lineup standpoint, they're great flexes. Like this is the flex range. Maybe Roma Dunze, maybe Tet McMillan, maybe Travis Hunter belong in the flex range of wide receivers too, from a production standpoint, but they have a lot of value insulation, and that's why they're a tier or two above of these guys. But flexes is just kind of my last saying here. If you guys don't disagree with that at all, I guess my only question is a third to go between these guys. Are we taking that in a vacuum, or probably just with the caveat of we probably prefer Egbuka to anybody else in this tier if we are in a rebuild? So with that caveat of we're not in a rebuild, are you taking a third to go between any of these guys, or any preferences?
With that caveat, I think, yeah, it just makes sense to do that. Egbuka, he's just the one guy we can see jump 2-3 tiers. I don't think the other guys really have that as much in their bags, but yeah, I think in a vacuum, with that caveat, I would take a third.
I think that's probably a good process. I don't know if I would do it for Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison every time. I don't love either of them. I don't think they have much room to grow. I don't think Devonta Smith does either, but I think he's a little better of a player. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a third's smart. I don't think I'm doing it for Egbuka even on a contender unless I need that player to start, just because I want to see what's in the box. You know, it could be a boat.
It could be Zay Flowers. All right, so moving along from tier 7, trying to keep these later ones a little bit shorter. Let us know in the comments below if you want deeper discussions on these. We'll engage with you down there or try to do a better job next video. Tier 8, go ahead and give me a rough description of this tier, JP, as well as a rough price point on these guys. It's a murky tier, a lot of guys. There might be 8 players in tier 8.
Yeah, if the tier before was the flex tier, this tier I'd probably roughly define as flex with a little bit more age to them. But these guys I think are worth about the 1-2 turn, probably early second more so is what I'm thinking. But David, who do we have here?
Yeah, we got another big in here. Go Terry McLaurin, Jameson Williams, Matthew Golden, George Pickens, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, and Jalen Waddle. Kind of another hodgepodge group here of random stuff. And, you know, when it comes to this tier and the next tier specifically, like, I imagine there'll be a lot of people that disagree and want to rank them in different ways. I don't think any of us would fight too hard, maybe on a few guys here and there. But, you know, this is just a group of guys that, yeah, I'm happy to have on my flex. You know, maybe you got a crush on one of them and you really want to be exposed to them. That's fine. To me, I could take or leave any shares of any of these guys, to be honest with you. If I'm competing, yeah, it's great to have McLaurin, but he's a little older than I think most people think. I'm not sure he's going to ever repeat what he did last season. I root for him too, as a former Buckeye and all, but it's not an inspiring tier, but it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. Title of your sex tape. A little Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference, sorry.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so this tier here, I kind of view it as the younger upside guys kind of is a little bit different. Like Matthew Golden, who are the younger upside guys? I mean, maybe Williams, maybe Pickens still, although they're, getting a little bit further from younger. I think they're still 24, 25 age range. Then we have a lot of guys that I think are more contending pieces. Pickens almost kind of fits into that too, just because of his he's such a weird player because he's young, but we don't feel any confidence in him long term because he just left Pittsburgh. So, of course, he's going to lose his mind if it's not already lost. We have Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, Pickens. I think all have a decent shot at being like a solid wide receiver 2 this year. So, if we can get that for a early second type of price point, a couple random 26 seconds, but there's not anybody in this tier that I feel any level of confidence paying a future first, even if I think it's a guaranteed buy team's future first for. So I think we've kind of, well, that last tier I think was kind of fair valued as a late first. I think this tier I might consider a 1-2 swap, but that's probably the best I can do. Do you guys kind of agree there?
I do, but I also don't think that you're buying these guys for that price. I think pretty much each one of them, the manager that has them in almost every situation is convinced themselves they are worth a first. And if that's the price, then I'm probably staying out of this tier.
Yeah, and if a friend of the show, Awesome Dumpling, listens to this, George Pickens is worth a first in that one league, just so you know. Because you're right, David. I do feel like I probably want about a first to sell these guys. I might be looking at I might be willing to take these guys for a 1-2 swap if I know it's a late second to sell. If I'm looking to liquidate, I might be willing to take that side of getting the first and sending one of these guys with a late second to get that future capital, just if I don't need to start them because they're just flex plays like we said. And then I guess the last kind of question I have is a third to go between any of these guys. I'll answer first. I would do it with everyone besides Waddle. Just personally. Anyone have a different answer?
What did Waddle do? It's Waddle and Tua. Nah, I think you have your reasons, and I don't think that they're invalid. I think that he could bounce back. I tweeted about Jalen Waddle lately, and his yards per route run over the last 3 seasons was 2.59, 2.63 up to last year's 1.53. So I personally think it was an outlier. I think he's still talented, but he's not young necessarily. I think he's like 26. So after a down year, I don't blame you. But yeah, in a vacuum, I would take a third to go between any of these guys. I've always been a little lower on DK Metcalf lately in the last couple of years. And then Pickens, I really like the fit with Dallas, though. I think that he complements CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott beautifully. So, I've advocated against him, but I think he might be the most attractive guy in this tier to me now, actually.
Yeah, for me, if I'm competing, I think I'm sticking with Terry McLaurin for a third. If I don't need the points at all and I've just got a ton of depth, I'm sticking with Matthew Golden for the third, just for the upside. The other guys, regardless of the situation, sure, let's go ahead and swap. And aside from the other two cases that I just mentioned, I'd move between all of them for a third.
And although I might have said last question before that one, I have one last question. This is the first time it's ever happened in the history of the podcast. But assuming we can't get a first for this guy, we can't add a little bit and get a first, but we want to pick up some draft capital for these guys. I guess I kind of view this tier as a tier. I'd love to pick up a second and a startable wide receiver. If I could get a second and Calvin Ridley, because somebody thinks this guy is worth about a first, a second and Cortland Sutton, Mike Evans type of deal. Doubt you could get Devontae Adams in that, because I think some people would have Devontae Adams almost in this tier from what I've been seeing of just like the redraft minded dynasty owner. But do you guys kind of agree with that assessment of I kind of want to get off of this tier when I can, if I can get, like you said, you want Terry McLaurin if you're competing, but if you could get Evans in a second or anything like that, David, you taking that? Is this a move off of it tier kind of in your guys' mind? Unless we're holding Golden. I don't mind holding
Golden. Yeah, if I can get a second to move to anyone we have in tier 9, especially veteran to veteran or young guy to young guy, and then there's probably tier 10 would also be acceptable. We didn't go to 10 tiers in this video, but I think there's a handful of guys that I think we could argue maybe belong in tier 9 that we didn't put there. So yeah, like Kyle Williams in a second for Golden, I'm probably holding Golden, but I could see that being kind of the line that some people would want to flirt with. I saw someone try and make a case on Reddit that Kyle Williams was worth a first. That was a fun thread to read through. Reddit is a fun place to go sometimes if you need a laugh.
I'll sell it. I might be willing to trade like a 2036 first for him. I wouldn't even still.
Is that even a real year?
No, that's why I might be willing.
Are we going to make it to 2036?
Not in this political climate, but anyways.
I was going to say, I do agree. Yeah, I think those examples are good because I think Ridley and Sutton, those are rock solid producers, and to pick up a second, a lot of these guys, they might just be worth a second a year from now. You're getting production and you're getting that value insulation with the second. Plus, you could use that second to buy something you need in a season.
And I'm not going to ask anybody to define tier 9 because are you guys familiar with the term smorgasbord? There's every kind in that tier. It's all sorts of over the place. I will just say probably worth a early to mid first, but not an early to mid second, but not an early second, right? Not the 201, 202, probably not the 203. Right around the 203 line is when we start to say maybe it's worth that. And a early future second that we don't think is guaranteed to be the 201 is kind of ish the point, but ranging down to maybe 04, 05, 06 type of price point. And who are the 316 guys in this tier, JP?
Yeah, it's a big one, and
That's what she said.
the Penix jokes. Anyways, yeah, starting out with somebody I love and I'm really hoping can bounce back. It's Brandon Ayuk. We have Chris Godwin, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill. What a fall. We have Jerry Jeudy. Is that Jerry Jeudy? Ricky Pearsall, Luther Burden, Trey Harris, and Jaden Higgins. So we have 3 rookies tacked on to this, as well as 32-year-old Mike Evans, Devontae Adams are right around there. So yeah, it's quite a tier.
I thought you were going to make a Ricky Pearsall's old joke and call him 32-year-old Ricky Pearsall.
He's only 30. We would love to, if you can't get draft pick for Hill, Evans type of guys, we would love to get younger in this tier for those guys. There's a non-zero chance that Hill might be able to fetch you a first in season if he's doing wide receiver 1 things. I might hold on to Hill if I'm looking to rebuild to see if he actually is producing in season. I love the idea of trying to pivot off of any of these old guys for any of those rookies or Pearsall or Ayuk or Godwin, honestly, just to get younger within the same tier, because I do think those other younger guys should accrue. By younger, I mean Ayuk, Godwin even should accrue value later in the season. Adams as well in the same type of vein. But this tier really does segment into 3 things: middle-aged, practically dead, and young, unproven guys. So I think there's a pretty clear, we love the middle-aged and old guys on any contender, and we prefer the rookies on any rebuilder. Within those little 3 segmented groups, middle-aged guys, veteran guys, and rookie guys, any third to switch between those guys? Are there any players that stand out? Are you taking a third to move from Burden to guys that you hate, David?
I gotta stand by my guy. I've been in the Luther Burden camp for well over a year. Call it take lock if you must, but I think he's shown enough. I believe in his skill set. I do. The more I think about his landing spot, the more I like it. He might be the next JSN Roma Dunze guy. I know he's in the same place as Roma Dunze, but I think Ben Johnson's going to have a ton of fun with him. It might take a little while. He's also going into the year hurt already, which is following the JSN path very closely. But yeah, he's the one I wouldn't move to the other young guys for a third. If I'm competing and I can add a third to him to get one of these studs, I'm interested at least. Yeah, he'd be the one that stands out to me.
Before I answer, Justin, does Ricky Pearsall fit more in the middle-aged category or closer to the rookie one?
I'd put him in the rookie category personally. Unproven, didn't play a lot last year because of the whole getting shot thing.
No, I think that's a really good process because they're right around. They all could be 1-year rentals. They could be 2-year rentals. We don't know for sure. So, and I think their ceiling is about the same at this point anymore. I mean, Tyreek, we acknowledge he probably has a slightly higher ceiling at this still, but I don't think it's that different.
I mean, honestly, any of those 3 guys could be a wide receiver 1, and none of us would bat an eye.
One thing I just want to throw out there, I have to look more into this, and I should have done it before the show, but I suck at this, apparently. There's been some concern that maybe Brandon Ayuk had to have repair on his MCL, I believe, as well as the PCL. I might be wrong on the ligaments. I apologize if that's the case. But we knew he had to have one of them repaired, and there was concern about another, but we thought maybe it healed naturally. I read a doctor inferring from some information, so this wasn't direct. We don't know for sure, but it sounds like maybe there's a higher chance that the MCL had to be repaired as well, which he made it seem like that really could impact his 2025 season in a bigger way than we were expecting. And if that happens, then it all snowballs from there, in my opinion. So I might be a little weary of buying Ayuk. I just need to look into it more. I'm not saying avoid him for sure. I'm just saying we should do a little more research before we trade Godwin for Ayuk in a third, for example.
Yeah, and I think Ricky Pearsall in that scenario, he might raise close to that tier 8, just right on the edge for me. I personally am a fan. I liked his reception perception results, especially when he gave the context that half the results were really, really bad because he was coming back from the gunshot wound, and that the second half was like really, really good, and the end results were still fairly good. So, but if you look at the end of his season, the last 2 games, he was really like breaking out, truly. But it was the last 2 games of the season, so we don't really remember it. And also, week 18, who kind of cares kind of thing. But honestly, he could be the wide receiver 1. And I don't know, that probably won't mean top 15 wide receiver still. But I mean, he could be a wide receiver 2 maybe, and that would be huge for his value, especially if Ayuk's out the way.
Yeah, it's definitely a big tier. So I definitely was expecting to have some. I don't know about this guy. I don't know that I want to go between this guy and this guy. But for the most part, I think, it's pretty odd group of, everybody else. It's a good tier to be flexing from, in my opinion, because it's a very cheap tier to be flexing in. I think we mentioned some other guys that probably could be mentioned very close in value to some of these guys. Ridley, Sutton, etc. Let us know in the comments below anybody you think we missed as well.
Jaden Reed.
I don't even know who that is, and I refuse to acknowledge the interjection.
His splits in the games where Jordan Love was healthy versus when he was either not playing or not playing healthy were pretty crazy. And I do think I've seen a lot of evidence, plus I've seen a lot of Matt LaFleur's game calling in general. I think the heavy run was a lot to do with Jordan Love's injuries. I think they will be throwing a lot more in neutral downs, and I think Jaden Reed actually could bounce back. Now, I was wrong on him last year, and I could be wrong again, and I just hope he's good, but I think that's a good call, JP. He belongs on this list somewhere.
Agree to disagree. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dyno Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dyno Construction Podcast, until next time.